Ask Reddit. What illegal thing do you do on a regular basis?
When I was younger, my sister and I were driving down the road when we saw a roadkill raccoon. We decided to pull over to see if it was still alive. It wasn't, but it had a baby raccoon trying to cuddle up to it. We felt bad and took him in. He lived with us for about 14 years until he died. Apparently, it's illegal to own a raccoon without a license, but raccoons only live for around 3 years in the wild. So I like to think we gave him a pretty good life as an orphan raccoon, regardless of it being illegal. We lived in a small town and regularly took him on walks to the park. He loved people and sat on my shoulder while I was on a 4th of July parade float. Rest in peace, Bandit.
When I was in college, parking was $500 per semester, which I couldn't afford. I simply went to class each day until I got a parking ticket. I went online, paid the $50 fine, but kept the ticket. Every time I would park on campus, I would toss the ticket out onto my windshield so that the parking enforcement thought I was already ticketed. This worked for 2 years, $1,000 worth of parking for $100. And then I came out of class one day to find 2 tickets and a note that said, "Nice try."
In The Sims, I use cheat codes like Ka-Ching or Rosebud to avoid financial struggles for my family or character.
I have learned so much illegal information today. Can't wait to use my newfound wisdom.
When I was a kid, I thought it was normal that we could buy movies the day after they came out from the Chinese lady in the chicken shop. I didn't realize it was a crime until middle school when I told someone my grandma had the movie Avatar on DVD, and they said that was impossible since the movie was still in theaters.
I have never told anyone about this before. Back when I was 15 in 1979, I stole a Datsun 240's car in my neighborhood. I was walking home from a friend's house one hot summer night, and as I walked by this cool Z car, I noticed a single key sticking out of the driver's door lock. I had always thought the car was cool and thought it would have been amazing to drive. Well, it was. I looked around and saw no signs of life anywhere. So I got in and drove it off. It was a super nice car. I drove all around the valley as I grew up in Palm Springs. This car was too nice to be treated to just a joyride. So after a few hours of driving it, I took it back and parked it right back in its parking spot. At about 4 a.m., I figured it was very unlikely that the owner would even know it had been driven, other than it missing about 1/3 of a tank of gas. But I did keep the key because they would think they just misplaced it somewhere. And I guess that's exactly what they did, because a couple of weeks later I did the same thing, only this time it was almost out of gas. So I had to put some in it. I did the second time just like the first time. About a week later, I did it again. That time, I drove it up to Big Bear Lake because I was dying to drive it on mountain roads. It was a blast. Until I stopped at a little gas station and market to get a snack and bumped into one of my older brother's good friends, who knew I was only 15 and didn't have a driver's license or a car, much less a vintage sports car. I can't remember the lies I told him, but I knew I was going to be in deep trouble when I got home. I hurried back to Palm Springs, stopped at a convenience store, filled the car with gas, and snuck it back into their driveway. I took a pen and scribbled out a thank you note, telling them that I really loved their car and they really shouldn't leave the key in the door overnight. Oh, and by the way, I filled the tank for you. Thanks. Oh, and my brother's friend never said a word to anyone about seeing me.
I would like to know how many people cheat on their taxes just because they are unaware of what they are supposed to do or pay.
I pick up bones out of the woods. Apparently it's illegal, but I don't care.
Downloading music through YouTube to MP3.
I cut my own hair in my house, but I am not registered as a hairdresser under the 1939 Hairdressers Act.
During football season, I provide verbal accounts of the game without the consent of the National Football League.
Illegally downloading movies from unauthorized sites and illegally using pirated software.
I drove a car without a title, registration, or insurance for about 6 years. Going anywhere was a constant anxiety of being pulled over. I am glad those days are over.
Nice try, Federal Bureau of Investigation.
I illegally jaywalk all the time. I just can't resist the thrill of crossing the street wherever I please.
I download a new car every other day.
Hiding snacks in my jacket at the movies.
Allowing my donkey to sleep in my bathtub in the state of Arizona.
I buy organic vegetables and ring them up as non-organic in self-checkout.
Unfortunately, I am an addict and I have done a lot of drugs. That takes you down a path with lots of criminal activity. I started a shoplifting ring in my city and was eventually caught. I was arrested and had to go to jail. I have prostituted myself for drugs and money. I am incredibly ashamed and hate myself sometimes. But I have 2 years clean now and continue to make my recovery my first priority.
Murder. Drugs.
Wow. Tough to say. I'm generally pretty law-abiding. Great question, though. I guess if I had to pick one thing, I would say murder.
Sail the high seas.
In 1994, I had an '87 Toyota Celica in black. It was a really nice car when I bought it, but it had a missing hubcap. Not knowing where to get a replacement, I took a hubcap from another Celica in my neighborhood. I was young and 17 years old. I drove that car for 2 years until I got into an accident. Since I no longer needed the hubcap, I put it back on the car. I took it from 2 years earlier. I always wondered what the owner thought about it.
Yeah, my dad used to beat me when my friends would burn compact discs for me, thinking that the Federal Bureau of Investigation would raid our house for $3 burned compact discs of Blink-182 and Incubus and so on.
Suspicious salmon handling.
Speeding.
Nothing, officer.
I took a shell from the beach. In my defense, I didn't know it was illegal at the time. The beach didn't miss it.
I do not always come to a complete stop at a stop sign.
Here it goes. I sped. I followed too closely. I ran a stop sign. I almost hit a Chevrolet. I sped some more. I failed to yield at a crosswalk. I changed lanes at an intersection. I changed lanes without signaling while running a red light and speeding. Also, piracy and anabolic steroids.
I have been stealing grapes at the store, one at a time.
Tossing squirrels down people's pants for gambling purposes.
I downloaded movies and television shows from torrents all the time. I'm still paying for Netflix, Crunchyroll, Apple TV Plus, Prime Video, Max, and Disney Plus. But I like to watch the content on my own terms, in a unified user interface, and not have to figure out different apps for each piece of content. So I have a torrent and Plex setup, and I watch what I want when I want.
Take rocks from everywhere I visit.
I exceed the speed limit 80% of the time I'm behind the wheel. Not because I like driving fast, but because I hate driving. I just want to get it over with. Teleporters can't come soon enough.
I use Q-tips to clean inside my ear. I dropped a Q-tip-shaped microphone.
I'd like to plead the Second Amendment, the right to bear arms.
Are you a police officer?
Smoke marijuana.
Thank you for listening. Remember to subscribe to Monumental Stories for new videos every day.